Welcome to Regional Property Unplugged for this Tuesday morning. We've got to move in a little bit today. We've got Simone from Ray White. She's property manager leader of the team. Team leader at Ray White. And we're going to ask a few questions because we have, from what we've been talking about in the last few weeks, a lot of investors coming into Mildura. And these guys have been running hot. It's been pretty busy, yeah? Still?
Flat out.
Flat out, yeah, cool. So let us talk about property management. So what actually is it? So it's like, you know, if people are investing and thinking that they can do it themselves, it's probably a bad idea. It's not necessarily asking about, you know, who's got the best fees. It's really a business partnership, isn't it?
Service, yeah.
So
what happened most recently, I suppose, in COVID, is that we had a whole new act we had to abide by.
Oh, really?
And we just got busier and busier. So if you managed a property on your own, you had no backup, no training. We've got the Ray White group training. So that was really important.
There's a lot of new laws, weren't there? Like you couldn't, if a tenant was behind in rent, you weren't allowed to evict, certain things like that, because of obviously the, you know,
still can't.
A lot of people lost their jobs.
Oh, okay.
So that's things that a lot of people don't understand. I think you can, if someone wants to move into their own rental property, there's that process you can go through. But I think for the girls, I noticed, obviously I'm in sales, I'm up the other end of the building, but I know they've been really busy chasing their tail with all these new stuff.
So the COVID laws at this point still won't end, or the act, until end of March.
Okay.
So we're still under a whole different act, which most people don't realise. You still can't evict if they're COVID affected. There's a moratorium on rent increases. There's still so much we have to abide by.
So if someone wants to put their property on the market, is that the rules are still in place? They can't evict.
So
Water do.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm dying on live TV.
No good.
I'm alright.
Okay.
No coronavirus here. I
Don't have
promise.
to resuscitate.
There's processes around it. So yeah, if you want to put the house on the market and you've got a tenant, as long as they're not in a lease, obviously, but if they're not COVID affected, there's still ways around it.
Oh, okay.
And obviously we would help to relocate them if they're willing to, but
right.
there
Okay.
is water.
Yeah,
Water.
let's do it.
Get some water.
Because do not want to die today.
So when we're talking about property management, for you guys, what actually do you manage? What parts of property do you manage?
So ultimately we're the in-between from a landlord and a tenant. So there's the Act, right now we're under the COVID Act, but the Residential Tenancies Act is full of legislation that most landlords would not know about.
Okay.
So we ultimately have to do the right thing by the tenant and the right thing by the landlord, but guided by the legislation.
Yeah.
So dealing with maintenance, which is a big thing, making sure tenants pay their rent, everyday things that occur in a property.
Okay.
Whether it's either council laws that we have to know to Residential Tenancy Act laws, there's so much to it.
I think from my point of view, I often hear the horror stories from investors trying to tackle it themselves, trying to tackle renting their own property, thinking that they're saving that little bit of percentage of the rent amount to then go and be the landlord, and it often makes it very often there's a lot of disaster that ends with tenants not abiding by and houses getting wrecked. So I think the property management side of things is a crucial thing. We're getting a lot of investors, particularly from Melbourne, and like a lot from Melbourne. I think last week we had
investors aren't from here.
15 virtual inspections just last week on one little property that we had. So they're coming out of the woodwork, and you know, it's important for us to be able to ask the girls in the office to say, okay, well, what's the expected rental amount? Because that's based on returns from a sales point of view. They're basing their decision on what they'll pay on what return they'll get for rent. And then often we're then referring onto the girls to then look after, if they're not, it's going to be hard for them to do it if they're not living locally. So
yeah, that's it. That's right. Yeah. So the application process, do the landlords get to say who the tenants are, or do you go through that process?
We prefer they don't, because we're doing this every day.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are vetting tenants, we're the ones who meet them, we're checking references, we're checking databases. So because we've been doing this for years and this is what we're trained to do, if a landlord says, hang on, let me make the choice, we kind of think, well, this is, we're the ones that are experienced in making those choices. However, if a landlord particularly wants to know and says who is it, and we can let them
There's
know.
a fine line with that, isn't there?
It is hard,
Because
yeah.
you know, everyone has an opinion on who they think they should have.
Yeah.
So.
But we base applications, or who we approve, mostly on their references and where they've rented before and how well they treated the property, paid their rent.
If they don't have references,
So that's when they have to tick all the other boxes. So if they've been a homeowner before, that's great because they usually have looked after their own house.
yeah,
But we might check on the real estate agent who sold the house.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We will check obviously their income to make sure they can afford the rent. I always like giving people who come out of home for the first time a go, you know, kids who are getting their first job. you
Yeah,
know,
no,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
good.
They left school
Yeah.
Well, you
in their
can't get a
first job.
reference if it's like saying you can't get a job if you haven't, you know, if you don't get experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's the same with the rental
Yeah,
side.
chicken, egg, what comes
That's
first?
it. You've
kind
got to
of-
start
What is
somewhere.
it? The egg or the chicken?
Yeah.
Never know.
I don't know the answer to that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
So yeah, but usually if they're first time renters, then as long as they've got a good job, you know,
Yeah.
as long as, so there's lots of boxes
And you
to tick.
and sometimes it's important to meet that potential tenant too, face to face, so you can get a feel
It's
of
a
what they're
gut
like.
feel, yeah.
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 An intuition, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we've been doing this, when Ray White started in 04,
2002? Oh, was it 4? 2 or 4?
I think you started about a month
4.
after, was it 2004?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been in sales, property management, you're the office manager,
Accounts.
accounts, receptionist?
Nothing left.
Yeah.
I was
So-
never a receptionist.
Never a
No way,
receptionist.
no.
It literally knows every part to the business, which is handy from just having that holistic idea and
Yeah.
from a top looking down, that she understands the sales side of things just as much as
Yeah.
property management. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's been handy seeing.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
she got the
So-
drag to Mildura.
Yes.
My
And I
husband.
didn't even grow up here.
Oh, that'd be great. So what do you think, what are the percentages, roundabout? What would be out-of-town investors versus,
I was thinking this the other day, I'd love to literally know
Yeah.
the exact, but I would say, it's more than half
Is it?
of our
Really?
investors that
Aren't
aren't
local.
from, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. I would have thought 20% versus 80%.
No, I'm going to do the stats so probably, and I should have done it before today.
Well, you've got time if you want
But-
to run
But like you said, lots of Melbourne investors.
Yeah.
Because we're really affordable here.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a very good return.
Yeah.
A lot of investors like to balance their portfolio, so they'll actually say, all right, well, I'm going to buy something in an area where I might get good capital growth in a city, maybe an up and coming city like Adelaide or Brisbane
Yes.
or whatever, and then something that gives them really good returns but may not get the capital growth we don't.
And that's exactly our market, yeah.
Yeah.
Our returns are much better.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
How's it going? Like, are we running out of properties for renters? What's going on now?
For a long time, yes.
For a long
Vacancy
time?
rate still.
Yeah.
Ours from down near zero.
Can you
We
explain the
literally-
vacancy rate? Because it's not about
okay.
how many properties are actually vacant, isn't it? It's more about, because you've got a lot of people moving out of rentals. It's the particular time where it's actually vacant, you don't have a tenant for, right?
That's right.
Oh,
And
yes.
and
So-
we're at under 0.5%,
Yes.
which would
yes.
be like the
And that's probably because there's a day or two between one tenant coming out and the other one going in.
yeah.
Wow.
And that on a national, I was reading some stats at a national level, and there's not many under 0.5%. There's probably only maybe 5 to 10 around Australia that are under 0.5%.
right.
I would have thought.
Yeah.
So
And you think about what's happened to Melbourne right now in COVID, which is really disheartening for so many investors and tenants because lots of people lost their job. First thing they did was vacate. They couldn't afford to stay in the cities,
Yeah.
in the apartments. So their vacancy rates are huge right now.
yeah,
And yes, they were locked down for a while, but there's lots of Melbourneites now coming to Mildura
yeah.
or to country Victoria. Yeah.
Yeah.
So more than ever, we've got hardly any properties that will be available,
Yeah,
but we're super strict on who we put in.
Yeah.
So we can still have,
you've got choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
luckily we do have choice, yeah.
Yeah, I find I get a lot of messages and phone calls. I'd have at least 1 or 2 a day through social media asking for help to get a rental from people I know and people I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the demand at the moment. So for any investors out there, and I think the investors that are switched on, the reason they're ringing Mildura is because they know the vacancy rates. They're looking here. We're in the public eye a little bit on the national level with the way our values are increasing quite quickly. So for an investor, Mildura is a good option, but you still need a good property manager.
Well, like you said, so our returns have been far better than most other markets.
Yeah.
But now what you're saying is we're probably going to
We're
start
actually
to
getting
get
into
the growth.
capital growth too.
Yeah.
So I think the benefits of any investors from the last couple of years will actually have experienced both great returns, the rentals are going up, capital growth, and I think capital growth is only going to get better. So
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mildura is amazing, really, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter where you live in Mildura, you're close to schools, you're close to things. It's really like it's not spread out.
Everything's here, that's right, and you're 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
unless you live out the
It's
back of
ideal.
Red Cliffs.
So we live in
That ain't 5 minutes away.
And that's only 20 minutes away
Yeah.
still.
Yeah,
But the
that's
cities,
it.
they're travelling, an hour to work, hour and a half.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
On a good day.
So the people that don't understand, so the Ray White rent roll would have what, 700 properties?
Yeah, about 650 at the moment.
650, yeah. And there's what, maybe a team of 8 to 10 girls in there, and now Will, the guy from Melbourne's come up.
No, it's not 8 to 10, there's about 5 of us.
Right, so Will, the other
We
people
just
I'm
work
seeing.
really hard.
Oh, okay, is that what it is? But that's a lot of properties
Yeah.
from a lot of different people that you've got to manage.
Well, we've got a couple of part-timers too, sorry, you're right.
Yeah, so that was, I was concluding
Will,
them.
yes.
Yeah,
Will's our first male property manager, I
Yeah.
think ever in Ray White,
there you go.
Mildura. And he's come from Melbourne, so he's experienced already, property manager. And yeah, we've got a couple of new trainees, and Heidi's come over from sales. So we've got a good mix of a team.
Cool. What's the best part? What's the best part of your job?
But it is
The
different
donuts.
every
The
day.
donuts.
Yeah.
Morning tea?
No one brings us
No
morning
one brings,
tea.
no, we don't get morning tea either.
The best part, and that's why I love property management, I've been doing it for so long, is every day there's something different.
Awesome.
As soon as you walk in, there's a new challenge, a new question, someone needing different advice. It's just different every day.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be
And
challenging, but it's
I
different.
bet,
It's
yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
But it's been like seeing end of chapters, new chapters constantly.
Meeting so many people.
Yeah.
I think that's the
Amazing.
best
Housing
thing about real
people,
estate, isn't
housing
it?
people,
Yeah.
they're so happy.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the great thing about the industry is that you do, and like I know the time that I stepped out of real estate for a while, the people that I'd stop and talk to up the street for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes half an hour, were the people I met through real estate.
Yeah.
And just you create really good bonds with people, don't you? And that's
Yeah.
buyers, vendors, landlords, tenants, and it is, you're right, every day is different.
And we're in Babels, unlike you probably, when you sell a home, that process ends.
A little bit. Try not
Hopefully, try not
But
to,
more
sorry,
so,
but
yeah.
we get to go in their house every 6 months.
to. Yeah.
So the relationships we create
Yeah.
do go on for quite a long time,
Yeah.
and
And then given the
they do offer you a cup of tea,
landlord's
and they
update,
do want
yeah.
to have a chat and a catch up, and you create really good relationships.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Do you get gifts at Christmas?
No? Anyone out there?
Champagne?
We're not allowed to take gifts, I don't think. I think
eh?
that's under the
All
act.
Just give them to me and I'll pass them on.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
promise.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Have you got anything to add, Mark?
Not really. I don't know if there's any questions, but if there are investors out there, or even people that are thinking of going down that line of investing. It is very much about making sure you know all the answers and what it's going to cost and what returns you're going to get from a home loan. There's so many different little things, but I reckon talking to the girls at Ray White regarding that scenario is pretty crucial.
I think one really important thing and apart from all the financial part of it and from your perspective too, is buy a property that is going to attract a good tenant.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to buy in a bad area or a house that's falling apart, you're not
Yeah.
going to attract a good tenant. And I think that's the most easiest thing to look for when you're buying an investment.
Yeah.
Who's
It
going to
doesn't matter.
Who's going to want to live there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
want to be proud in where you live, don't you? And I think that's the problem when I see properties on Facebook that get advertised for private rentals, and you know that they're going to get bombarded by the people that are potentially not allowed to rent through an agency
Yes.
because of past history.
That's right.
So you just got to be really careful.
Yeah.
It might be that they just don't pay the rent. It might be, and that's if you've got a loan and you're paying for paying your weekly loan or monthly
Your
loan,
mortgage,
and
yeah.
you're not getting the rental money, it's a very tricky situation. You've got to be careful that you are putting in the perfect person. And I think, as Sim said before, these girls are doing it every day. They're seeing the same. Well, they're seeing the good people. They get that intuition of obviously who they think would be the perfect fit for that property.
And we do, as Ray White, we have access to databases that private landlords don't and other people don't, so they can't check when someone's been put on a database for a very good reason, bad reason.
Yeah.
They can't do
That's
that.
important.
And people who have got bad rental history will lie on their application.
Yeah.
And usually the private landlords are the ones that take them in because they can't check it off.
I've seen some shockers over the
And that's
years.
when you hear the bad stories.
I've seen some absolute shockers and devastation. You know, like, I remember one lady, her house was completely trashed inside and out. She showed me photos of what it looked like before, beautiful roses, and, you know, it was her home. And I'd never seen anything like it, you know. So I've seen that happen a lot. And if you think you might just I'll pay you cash and all that sort of stuff. So you've got to be really careful.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking when things like that happen.
They're the ones that hit a current affair.
I do, yeah, exactly. That's it. So I do have one question though. So when we're selling a home, we're styling a home to sell, we're presenting it, and investors buy. Does that factor in when a house is presented, like might have new carpet, etc., for higher rent?
Will it achieve higher rent?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. Yeah.
If it's an older house that was rented already and you literally just replaced carpet, it's just going to be more appealing to the tenant anyway. It's not necessarily going to get a huge amount more if you've just replaced carpet.
You might get more applications.
That's right.
And more choice.
More choice, yeah. It's more appealing, it's more livable. Another thing is when a landlord maintains a property well enough, that you're going to retain the tenant, which costs less because every time a tenant comes in and out, it costs money and there's advertising and things. So having a property well maintained and well presented attracts the right one and keeps the right one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's ultimately what we all want.
Yeah.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, I spoke to some investors yesterday, and they've always erred on the side of conservative rent to ensure they get a good tenant, and that's just their choice, the way they invest. There's a long-term plan for when they retire, and they just said, no, we keep it a conservative rent because we really want to make sure we keep good tenants.
They don't want the good tenant to leave.
And they don't leave.
Yeah.
They don't leave. So there's different ways you can look at it. Some people are all about the return. They want the maximum rent. They do not want to spend $1, and then things end up going south because...
And it costs them more anyway.
That's right. Yeah, because they don't maintain the property. Like, you guys have got access to tradies and all that sort of stuff, haven't you? So if something goes wrong, click of a button, and the electrician or the plumber's there to fix it.
Yeah. That's cool.
All pre-approved, all checked out. And
Yeah. Oh, it seems so easy, really, isn't it?
Is it?
It's easy to buy an investment property. Invest in Mildura.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, and that's the thing. We're in these national headlines of Mildura's the place to invest. So I'm sure there's people in Sydney, Melbourne, and New York watching right now. That,
New York.
that are thinking of investing in Mildura's a place.
Yeah,
So,
Absolutely.
cool. Well, thanks, Sim. Thanks for coming and
Thanks,
having a
Sim.
chat. It's definitely.
I won't say any time.
Nah.
This is it.
A bit nervous, weren't you?
No, it's all good. It's just a chat, and we just really want to encourage people to have a look at Mildura and check us out. Real estate.
Give us a call.
It's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Get in touch.
It's
If
best
you want to go,
industry.
if you guys want to get in touch with Sim or any of the girls there about the property management side of things, just sing out.
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
where to find us.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Bye.
See
I
you.
made it through without dying.
You did. Hang on.